We're back with Julio Pabon and Byron Hunter, who have produced this documentary and are sort of the leaders of this new movement to try to get Major League Baseball to retire Roberto Clemente's number. Byron, there are people who might tell you, look, Babe Ruth's number was retired by the Yankees, but not throughout baseball. And here's a guy who hit so well after that scandal in Chicago, the World Series that they blew. And he sort of saved baseball. Then you have another guy like Ted Williams, who was a hero, war hero. His number has not been retired throughout Major League Baseball. Why Clemente?
Well, I think I'd rather answer why not the other guys, because we've kind of expressed why we feel Clemente should be there, but quite honestly, we were in Pittsburgh and people came to us and they said, well, what about Babe Ruth? And this is not a campaign to say that Babe Ruth or Ted Williams or anybody else's numbers should not be retired. We're just talking about what Clemente did. The reason we probably would feel a little bit more strongly about Clemente as maybe opposed to Babe Ruth was that if you look at Clemente's life and his career, he was not known as a person who drank. He was not known to do some of the things that Babe Ruth might have done. It might not have been to the best image-wise for him, because Roberto was just a clean person as well as a good humanitarian. So that's why we feel so strongly for him. But we don't really begrudge anybody that they feel like should go in, as long as Clemente is considered as well.
What kind of reaction? I know you had a screening right here for the documentary in the Bronx, another one in Manhattan already. What kind of reaction are you getting for the documentary?
It's unbelievable. We had a couple of people from Connecticut, a judge and her husband, who's a head judge of all of Connecticut judges. They came from Connecticut to see this. Now they want to take the film. It's going to premiere now in Bridgeport University on the 29th of April. Chicago, it's going to premiere on June 16th. They're going to dedicate the parade in Chicago to Retired 21.
Oh, wow.
We're going to have a multi-ethnic festival in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's not a Puerto Rican festival. It's a multi-ethnic festival, and they're going to be premiering the film, and they're going to be issuing one statement about, one of Clemente's statements was, if a day goes by that you didn't do something to help another human being, then you wasted your day on this earth. So they're going to use that as the theme for poetry, where all ethnicities are going to participate, and they're going to end it with this film. We're talking about Boston, other areas. So the film is generated, it's like a positive virus that's just growing throughout the United States that started here in the Boogie Down.
Tell me, what is the reaction you guys are getting, Byron, from the league, from the commissioner? We called them in the newspaper when we had this article, back cover of our new edition is all about, the same title that you guys have. In the same name that you gave your documentary. What reaction are you, and our reporters called them, and they said, well, we've taken it under advisement. Leandro Fortis, who wrote the article, he got, sort of like a lukewarm reaction. What is the commissioner's office saying to you?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand kind of what's happening in the world of baseball right now. And I think really the most important thing is that we were also in 2007, and a lot of people don't realize that approximately 60 years ago, a young man by the name of Jackie Robinson integrated baseball. Obviously, baseball has their own priorities, and I tend to believe that they feel that that's a greater priority right now than Clemente. For whatever other reasons they choose to feel whatever, they've been somewhat supportive, but I think Julio can probably elaborate a little bit more on just...
Go ahead, Julio.
Well, I think that right now, like Byron says, there's a lot of topics that are confronting baseball. I would like to just add to them and tell them that they really need to consider the fact that baseball right now is going through a crisis. They don't want to talk about it. But the fact that they recently had this World Classic, that kind of got them out of it, because now baseball is worldwide. Cuba, that was never participating in anything with sports, all of a sudden goes to the finals and plays Japan.
They broke
and
that
those
barrier,
two teams are the ones who are representing a real World Series. So that's exciting. But other than that, if you look at what's really happening in baseball, let's talk about it. Less and less young people in this country are getting into baseball. There are less blacks today than when Jackie Robinson played. They see all these little kids playing in the leagues, but how many of these little kids are going to become the next superstars? They're all coming from third world countries. Why? Because they're floating the dollar wherever it's cheaper. The scandals of steroids. So that you were a hero, you were collecting stuff because you thought this guy was going to be your hero. All of a sudden they're telling you, well, maybe all the home runs that he hit are not authentic. So now you're going back. So baseball got some little problems. So what better time to bring it all together and say, you know what, the ambassador, the guy who didn't take steroids, the guy who was never afraid to say, yo soy puertorriqueño, I soy Latino, I speak Spanish, I speak it with an accent, but I'm about everybody. Why not now have him become the ambassador
You know what part of the documentary, I just watched it yesterday, your documentary, and the one part that really impressed me is when you hear Roberto Clemente's own voice. He's speaking in Spanish, and
Yes.
you guys have subtitles. I think we have a clip of that, so let's watch this.
Me siento todavía con el estímulo de que hay que ayudar a todos estos muchachitos. Hay que ayudar a las pequeñas ligas, hay que ayudar a estos muchachos que van subiendo, porque ellos quieren ser alguien el día de mañana. Y no solamente el béisbol, solamente no se usa como profesionalismo, sino también se usa para el carácter de la vida diaria y para ser mejor ciudadano.
He's talking about how to be a better citizen. That's, I think, very impressive, too. I mean, you know, the guy was not just a baseball player, which is what you guys are trying to convey, right?
And that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to give people, as Julio had mentioned, when we got into this documentary project, again, it wasn't about retiring 21, but it was about letting the world see the different perspectives of what everybody else had on him. But the one thing we felt we were missing after we kind of completed it the first time was to bring him to life. And by just taking that one clip there and a couple of clips of him throwing the ball from the warning track to third base, I think changed it a lot, because I think people were able to humanize him and go, wow, he really was, he really sounds sincere and the humanitarian that we thought he was, because he's such a myth to so many people in their minds that sometimes we just need to hear that, almost like Albizu Campos. Sometimes you just got to hear him.
Yeah, and you know, there was a part in the documentary when you do see Clemente throwing the ball to third base.
No one today can do that.
But I mean, the guy was shotgun. I mean, incredible. But tell us a little bit more about his statistics. I mean, this is a guy who played in 14 World Series games and got a hit in every single game.
Today, no one still has that type of record where he has a hit in every single game. You know, he was the most valuable player of one of the series. He should have been the most valuable player perhaps in two. But to me, I think the highlight of all this was the fact that back in the 60s, you know, when nobody even heard of a Spanish anywhere, this guy is interviewed live on TV. This is the MVP. You got to recognize him. And he stops the camera and says, excuse me, primero tengo que decir bendición mami, bendición papi, le quiero dedicar este juego a todas las mujeres de Puerto Rico. As a kid, going through the screen, I didn't even know who Clemente was. I thought he was black, you know, black American. Also, I see this guy speaking Spanish. That affected me, and it's affected thousands and thousands of other men and women that I've heard throughout the country say, I saw that same piece, and it made me so proud. And that was what Clemente did. He did things that were out of the ordinary. He got fined once because instead of celebrating in the locker room, he went out to the streets to celebrate with the fans. So they fined him because he wasn't with the locker room. He said, it was okay, because they're the ones who really pay my salary. That's only one of many anecdotes that we got about Clemente.
One of the things that Jackie Robinson did, of course, is he broke all these barriers for African Americans. When you spoke and when you were doing these interviews for your documentary, you interviewed a lot of Latino players. Do they feel that he sort of opened the way for them?
I think that a lot of Latino players see Clemente honestly as being the bridge to the development of Latino players in this country. Obviously, he wasn't the first, and we know that. But when you look at one particular person in the same way you can look at Jackie and say, was there one influential person that when you look at kids today who say, I want to emulate and follow that person, the bridge was pretty much set with Roberto Clemente. He was the one that got all of the other players, especially in other countries, which he doesn't get credit for. At the time, I think Puerto Ricans were probably the most prominent in baseball when Clemente played, but people from the Dominican Republic, that Venezuela, countries that are playing baseball now, even when you ask those guys who are in the pros, they say it was Roberto Clemente, and that's an amazing figure to see.
And in Puerto Rico, he's like a god.
It's like a god. I mean, and today still, you know, I mean, the number of people that you still talk to and they mention Clemente, was like he's still alive. I mean, everywhere you go, people talk about him.
Okay. Well, before we go, we got very little time, but you guys have to tell us, how do our viewers join this movement? What do they have to do? Is there a petition drive?
Absolutely.
Is there a number they can call?
Absolutely. We want, you know, listen, we want you guys to definitely support this movement, and we made it very simple. We're using electronics and technology. We can go to latinosports.com or just go directly to retire21.org.
Okay,
and
so
everything.
Repeat that slowly.
Retire21.org. Para los que hablan español, same way. Retire21.org. It's retire21.org, and everything you need, including the petition, you can download it.
thank you very much for being on the program. We're very proud of what you're doing, and we're going to be behind you. We're going to keep up with you, okay?
Thank you,
Thank
Miguel.
you for being here.